History Channel's Alone Season 11 in the Arctic Circle. It's going to be a good one. So, if you want to know everything that they won't tell you on TV and learn tips, tricks, and strategies on how you could survive in a situation like that in the Arctic Circle, this episode's for you. And you might even find out who the winner is before the season's over. So, let's jump into it. Hey, I'm Teimojin from Alone Season 9, and I'm a doctor, veteran, and survivalist, teaching you guys the medical side of survival and preparedness. And in these series, I'm going to go over each episode and things that are missed in the commentary and things that you might want to take note on because you might be able to see who the winner is before the season's done. Dubie is next on our list. From Michigan, fly fisherman, hunter. The main thing that I saw different from his kit list was a Swiss Army knife. Maybe it has pliers on it, or maybe there was a reason why he didn't go with kind of like a plier setup. But they're good knives too. There's many different Swiss Army modifications that you can do. So I'm curious to see him pull that out. One of the things that I did notice for his backstory is he is doing it for his mom. So I definitely had a feeling that there's more to his story. It does seem like he mentioned that he doesn't have a whole lot of people at home that's kind of going to either miss him or he'll miss them. So that can be a good thing, that can be a bad thing. But I think the fact that he is wanting to do um, this challenge and to win that prize money for something greater than himself is something worth watching, and it will play into effect, I think, in later kind of episodes when we get to know him a little better. Because I think he is a good contender. One of the things we see right off the bat is there's a huge caribou. I'm hunting caribou in Alaska in August, but imagine if he could hunt that. Like he was within shooting distance for sure. Super curious. He was calling them in, and man, I'm excited because I think it's either like Dewey because I see this location in that moose shot. You know, that kind of wetland area. So whoever calls in that moose, I think is going to win. And I think this season it's going to be a male. Well, the odds are in their favor because there are 8 of them, and I think it might be one of the skinnier ones. I think it might be Timber, which we haven't seen yet, or Doobie, but we'll kind of see who gets consistent with their game calling. One of the things that he does do, and it was interesting that he picked this out because there is kind of like pros and cons. We don't see the other aspect or the other kind of image of this setup. We do see him kind of nuzzle into this kind of embankment over here, and there's definitely some thermal mass there, some dirt, some woods, and a good possible setup. But if you look at the flip side, if this embankment's truly on the opening of the river, once that Arctic winds start whipping, that's a lot of exposure and it almost funnels it in. So good for the thermal mass, but we'll see how the wind picks up and if that affects him. One of the things that he does do that's interesting is he uses willow, which will hold a decent amount. Will it hold the snow? We'll have to see. He does have some paracord, so I'm guessing his kind of conserving his paracord so that he can either use it for traps, use it for something else, use it for fishing nets, which is probably what I would do. I would, if I were to do that, I would go very light on the cutting tools, definitely like a multi-tool, and probably multi-tool and saw and fishing net. I think would be the change I would make, and I would be really hard pressed to leave some electrolytes behind because you know how important that is. And if you haven't kind of understood or really dug deep on which electrolytes to get, I have a video about it. I'll put it in the links right here. So we see in this initial setup, he is encountered by a big old bear. at night, and we see that he has a little bit of coverage. He has this little he has this camera box blocking the way, but it is a scary thing. No matter who you are, you're kind of in your sleeping bag, super exposed, paper thin tarp, and you hear this like 800-pound beast next to you, thinking about kind of exploring it a little further. And all you got is a little bit of bear spray. You can get your bow ready. So I always had that ready and within arm's reach. But especially in the first few days, it is something quite scary. And I think black bear is on the menu. I think one contestant mentioned about taking a black bear, but grizzlies, I think it's not on the menu. So one swipe, that's all it takes to make it incredibly hard for you to have a good chance of survival. Cubby's 33-year-old male, Boyer, does have some primitive skills. We see him hunting, fishing, and homesteading with his wife. He also went with like a classic cutting kind of setup with a multi-tool axe and saw. I think at this point, like boreal forest slash mainly working with pines and softwoods. If I were to do it again, I'd probably go with saw. Um, what I like is a good ability to do it one-handed and two-handed. A lot of the contestants bring like a silky saw. I do like the katana boys, but I think if I were to do it again, the axe, even though it's a tool that I'm incredibly familiar with, I think I would probably at least try it once with just a saw. So we see him use all that, and everyone basically has this very similar items and pretty focused on food procurement this season. And his thing, I think his motivation, I think the one thing that made me very, very hopeful for Cubby is that number one, he had a good motivator. You know, his wife was is sick, and he needed that money to help with her health. You know, that's such a strong motivator. And in addition to that, there's a time frame. You know, they wanted to have kids. He's 33. I don't know how old his wife is, but they're at that age where if they start having kids beyond that, it gets more and more difficult, harder on both of them, and also for a baby as well. So that was one of the things that really caught my attention as motivations to stay longer. And he did gain a decent amount of weight, so he had like if he did nothing, probably 60 days. And we see him take a shot at a squirrel early on. And one of the things that I noticed after this shot was he was using wood shafts. So wood shafts, I think for this environment, you can go either way. One thing that you can do is wood shafts. Typically, your broadheads on there or your kind of heads, you can use it and kind of reconnect them, re-put them on different types of arrows. So you can make your own arrows and really easily put it back on. But there are kind of adapters that you can use for like screw-on carbon fiber ones, and they're just really consistent with their flight trajectory, with their shape, especially if this was like Labrador and it was super wet and fluctuating in temperatures. Some of the wood can warp a little bit. So my preference for this type of thing would be I would do a carbon fiber arrow. And then if you are the type of person, and I did use pretty much the same arrow tip as Cubby used because Benji from my season gave it to me. And it did have an ability to kind of transfer it to a homemade, in the field made arrow. So really like the type of arrowhead he got, but we'll see that it didn't help him out. So we do see some poundage over here, and one of the things that I notice is how his cutting things. You know, like it doesn't matter who you are; you can be super experienced, but at the end of the day, after day one, two, three, you know, you don't have any food. Depending on what kind of water source you have, it can be like unenticing to drink, whether it tastes like poop or sulfur or something else. Um, and you just might not be doing things the way you typically would have been doing things. And we see that a little bit in some of the technique. When the wood isn't like super secured onto whatever platform and it's just moving, it's causing a lot of movement back and forth that's just like harder to cut. And one of the things that I would recommend is, since we have like a saw and that's going to increase your effectiveness, is what I'm looking for in the forest, especially in an area where I'm trying to look for wood resources for fire specifically, is two trees that are close together, or two trees that have like or one tree that has a notch in it. And I'm basically just plopping my wood in that notch or in that V. And if you have a saw, I did it with my axe. I'm just notching like maybe two-thirds of the way down in multiple different areas. I'm not cutting all the way through because I don't need to. Once you have that notch, all you need to do is go at the very end of that long dead freestanding tree and walk forward with it on your hips, and it'll snap, snap, snap. And that way you're using less energy to process your firewood. And even still, if you just have a fire going, which can help with predators, just to let them know you're there, and also to like deter them for the area, you can use that to cut. So that's another way to do it with minimal energy, because it does take a lot out of you. So I think if I were to do it again, I might just use fire and just like sit by the fire, make a fishing net, and have the fires cut my wood for me. And I do like this setup. It's kind of a open kind of concept, and he was on a hill. He said he got like a nice 360 view. Temporary shelter, it's fine. Kind of like a nice lookout for the different game trails that he was looking for. It is quite scary though, to think that you have 360 view, but exit points, like if you get ambushed by a wolf pack, it's definitely, I see that side of it of this season for sure. And again, there are some berries that you can take here, but you like if you have a berry patch and they look ripe, take some time and just gather as much as you can and eat a decent amount, because yeah, if you just stuff your face with them, you'll probably get like maybe 300 calories if it's like 4, 5 handfuls. And the thing about a lot of these berries is the acidity, and sometimes they have some tannins in it, so you can't even eat a whole lot of it because it can upset your stomach. I do like the idea of a platform. Cubby does have a platform idea over here. And one of the things that you got to consider is, yes, it'll keep you off the ground, but he like if he built this shelter up, he does need to like insulate it quite thickly, because if there's any airflow beneath it, that's going to just wick out the heat off of him. It's kind of like sleeping in a hammock, basically. But again, this is a lot of work, a lot of work. And at the end of the day, um, his kind of bush bashing, he has a quiver, and you can almost hear it as he's leaning forward slip out, and it gets him right in the nook of the inner leg. And that's the scary part. Like they definitely kind of talked about your carotid, or your femoral artery. Sorry, yeah, they did talk about your femoral artery kind of being close to that area. Um, so your femoral artery goes from like your hip area all the way down to behind your knee, where it becomes a smaller artery, your kind of knee artery, your popliteal artery. And it's hard to tell how close it got to that area. But I think just looking at this angle, kind of just went into the skin, maybe cut some meat as well, but it's decently deep. It's at least 2 inches deep. And he did a good job exposing the wound. But what I would do in that situation where you don't know what it cut, because it could have stabbed, and then as he walked out, it could have come out a little bit, is you want to prepare for a massive bleed. So we do have tourniquets in our first aid kit. So he could have like prepped it by putting a tourniquet on, just so that if it is a major bleed, he can tighten it and then stop it right then and there, and not kind of fumble around. He does end up using an Israeli bandage, pressure bandage, and I think that's appropriate for that type of wound. But unfortunately, it's um, yeah, you could use stitches there, but in the field, honestly, wound care is more essential than stitching it up. And if you have a capacity to wash it out under pressure, so If you have like bottles like these and you can like squeeze it and do that pressure, do that. If you don't know how to do that, check out my video on wound care and first aid. I'll put it in the descriptions and I'll put it here. But basically, if you wanted to stay in the field for an injury like that, wash out that wound, make sure it's not a major bleed, but wash it out. Hundreds milliliters per 1 centimeter of wound. So that was probably like maybe 4 centimeters of wound in kind of like a V shaped. So you would do at least half a liter of rinses there. And at this point, like you don't necessarily need to wash it immediately. You do have some time. So if I was him, put the pressure bandage on, walk to my water source. Typically for me, I kept water in my pot just in case I came back thirsty. And I would use that clean water to wash it out. And you can even increase your chances of reducing the infection risk if you had some kind of acidic mix. So in Labrador, we had a lot of reindeer moss, and that if it's soaked or boiled out, you can do a few rinses with that, but use that acidic water, let it cool down, and use that in your washes to get as much bacteria out and to create an environment that bacteria doesn't grow. And as long as you're able to feel everything in your leg, you're able to move it, and you're not bleeding, and you're not showing signs of infection, then you could stay for a wound like that. So at the end of the day, he has to call it, which is like if you don't have the training and you're nervous and there's a lot of pain, definitely not holding anything against them. But if you want to learn how to treat things like that and how to stay, if it was $500,000 on the line, or if your family's life were on the line, check out my free membership, free trial to my membership for medical training in survival situations. I'll put the link in the description. This course that we're running right now, and it's a longitudinal thing. So I'm taking people from initial no experience to having them survive beyond 2 weeks and learning increasingly complex and increasingly dangerous management of dangerous medical issues. So if that's interesting to you, please check it out because we're running that right now. Michaela, I think this is going to be my favorite contestant of the season. So Michaela, 33-year-old female, Cree Métis, and I think she's from Saskatchewan or lives in Saskatchewan, and she has a lot of indigenous knowledge. She's an adventure guide, and she too brought a fishing net. So I anticipate that she's going to be focusing on food. And right off the bat, we see the ingenuity for that traditional like teaching and making a duck decoy like very early on to make sure that you're working on your fish, and when you're working on your fish, birds on the menus too. And she's also scavenging the river lines and seeing what kind of red meat is on the menu too. So I really like the way she's approaching things. I really like the knowledge that she brings to the show and the representation as well. And I think one of the things that is really cool. She does her relationship kind of motivation over here is to be in a financial good state to have kids right after the show. So that can be a good motivator. Is it super urgent? Not putting it on a super high priority, but one of the things that I do see is the way she approaches it with that upbringing in the Cree and Métis kind of culture and also traditions. So one of the things that benefits her and will benefit her is her sense of gratitude, her sense of connection with the land. Because when things get hard, I think she's going to be able to tap into that and to benefit from that. She doesn't get any fish initially, but we can see some good habits already. She's anchoring it, and I think there are some people who did not anchor. Maybe I just didn't see the paracord anchored, but she does a good job anchoring this and repositioning the net in areas that might benefit her a little bit more because these are quite shallow in some of these locations. So this is an example of how she's kind of connecting with the land, finding meaning and support, and kind of that extra step that a lot of the other contestants may not have. If they're not spiritual, just 100% relying on their skills, their experiences, and their own ego or bullheadedness to push on. Sometimes that's hard and not enough if you don't have that extra thing, and definitely spirituality wins a lot of the time. So I think she's going to be one of the contestants that pushes harder than we think. And we do see wolves on the trail. We do see bears on the trail. And luckily, she does get some scraps. She gets a kidney. And one of the things that she does do is she roasts it. Preferably, I would boil pretty much everything that I cook out there, especially if there's fats and stuff like that. You're just taking a lot more of the vitamins. But sometimes like a roast meal is more of a taste thing, especially if that's not a whole lot of calories. So either way, not a huge difference. One of the things I did see that I really liked is the paracord attached to, it looks like her ferro rod. And what I did was I attached my ferro rod to my Leatherman and looped it through my carrier. So if one's out, it would be impossible to lose the Leatherman, and vice versa. So that is it for our contestants on episode 1. Let me know who you think is going to win, why you think they're going to win, and I'm so curious on the person, because I think once we get a visual on people's hunting grounds, we can kind of narrow out who the winner is. And I think it's someone who has like a marsh area, who's a male, and I think he's going to be one of the skinnier ones too. So excited about that. Let me know if these reviews are helpful for you. Let me know if you have questions about these episodes as well. And if you are learning and wanting to learn more about the medical side of survival, check out our new course, our new program at survivenow.online/lifeline. So I'll see you guys there, and we'll post some videos that might help you with other things related to survival.